In today's video, I take you guys through like a sled workout. So one of the things that I like to do with sled is I'll have a sled movement and I'll superset it with another movement. With the sled movement changing each time and the other movement changing each time, but the commonality being using the sled for a part of the exercise. I find the sled really beneficial to use your whole body and raise your heart rate. But not only that, with most sled movements, you don't have an eccentric phase. An eccentric phase is essentially when the muscle is lengthening, and the eccentric phase is what damages the muscles the most and causes you to be sore the next day. So by doing the sled more often, you're able to do like the sled won't make you feel as sore as like a regular lift. So like let's say you went all out on squats versus all out on sled, you'd probably feel more recovered on the next day with a sled than a squat, and you might even be able to do the sled again the next day, but not necessarily the squat. So on certain days where my main goal is kind of like to tax the body per se, still use heavy loads, but not necessarily feel the damage of something like a squat or something, I'll do the heavy portion or the heavy compound portion or the compound stuff. This is not fully true because most of my exercises today were compound, but the main idea being you're able to get a lot of output out, but not necessarily have the same recovery problems as you were doing like exercise that involves the eccentric phase as you would do with a sled. So that's one reason for why I incorporate this sled a lot in my workouts every week. It allows me to recover faster but still output the same amount of work from a day-to-day basis, and also get a lot of calories burned because it raises the heart rate and stuff like that. Also, you can load up the sled a lot, so you can get a lot of volume, a lot of heavy stimulus, and so even though your heart rate's up and you're sweating and stuff, you're not losing as much muscle mass and probably even gaining muscle when you do that. Anyway, but yeah, that was my main idea for today's workout, is again to be very functional, do a lot of work, but also be able to recover the next day. And superset one workout, one exercise with the other, do some explosive stuff, train movement versus looking at exclusively as, okay, I'm training chest or I'm training back, but instead I'm thinking of it as I'm training movements and I'm getting good at moving, and getting good at moving itself will build muscle, and then doing some like regular bodybuilding or hypertrophy work will, as a supplementary, will help you gain muscle or add to that muscle, like build your proportions or stuff like that. At least that's my philosophy, and I hope that makes sense. Anyway, that's it for the rant, and let's fast forward to the first exercise.
So it turns out my microphone wasn't working at the gym, but I guess that gives me an opportunity to be more clear with what I'm thinking and what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, instead of kind of babbling through being exhausted and barely being able to breathe during my sets. Anyway, so for the first circuit of the workout, I did backward sled, followed by forward sled, but sled push. There's different kinds of forward sled. One is like a sled drag forward. But anyway, doing the backward sled pretty much for the quads and the benefits that you get as far as knee mobility. And the sled push is for like a leg drive. But in this case, the weight's not heavy enough to really cause that much of a drive. I'm mostly just trying to get my heart rate up in this set. Uh, Going into weighted box jumps. So I'm holding a 30-pound ball and I'm doing 4 box jumps. Um, Working explosive muscle fibers. And so one of the goals of today's workout was to kind of make things a little explosive and kind of keep that theme of flow or moving with the weight. And so the next movement in the circuit is this kettlebell um, swing to lunge, but with a twist. Doesn't really have a name, but um, yeah, pretty much the first movement is to get the heart going. The second movement is to do explosive stuff while the heart is going, and then the third movement is to kind of keep that up. The kettlebell was relatively heavy, and I think I did about 4 reps each set. Um, for uh, but kind of to elaborate on the box jumps, um, it, rarely, like if you're following a traditional split, so to speak, rarely are you ever doing explosive stuff or training things like jumping. The muscle fibers involved in jumping, just like any other muscle fibers, will deteriorate over time if it's not being used. And so it's a good idea to incorporate stuff like box jumps and stuff into your training. For the second circuit, I kept with the reverse sled, but this time I'm doing one arm backwards one way and then the other arm backwards the other way. And then once I'm done getting back to the starting line, I do a forward sled drag again, keeping with the theme of using just one hand at a time. Um, so using one hand at a time focuses or forces my body to work unilaterally. Which in this case is like when the sled is being drug on one side, the way the quads and the various leg muscles have to get recruited in order to move varies quite a bit compared to if the weight was evenly distributed between both hands. And that's a kind of stimulus that you won't get very often, if because very most common way of doing things is to do both arms at the same time. And then the other thing that happens is you get additional core recruitment from doing movements this way, because the core has to compensate for the offset of the load. Um, then for the second movement of this the second circuit, I'm doing these. So if you're familiar with like Atlas ball carries are done with much heavier balls, but it's like you have to get low and pick up like a spherical object and bring it to your waist kind of thing. But with the medicine ball, it's light enough, and but it's 30 pounds, so you still require quite a bit of effort, and especially after doing the sled, it's going to take some out of you. But essentially doing it allows me to do 5 squats each side, but also gives that feeling of like I'm throwing something over my back, moving the momentum moving the force from leg to, I guess, biceps and shoulders to be able to accomplish that. And then at the end, to again keep the heart rate going and max out calorie burn, doing alternate staggered deadlifts with the kettlebell. Again, keeping with that theme of one side at a time, recruiting recruiting individual sides and forcing the opposing core to get activated. I find that doing stuff like that has helped a lot with my core development, and yeah, I think one of the reasons I have, or at least I think I have, pretty good obliques and side abs is because I focus a lot on doing unilateral work that's that forces one side to be recruited, uh, or the core of each side to be recruited pretty evenly between movements. Um, for the third circuit, I did bear crawls. Um, there's something about doing bear crawls that seems very primal, especially when you're carrying a lot of weight. It almost feels like you're a farm animal being put to work. And there's something about that whole concept of, oh, I'm an animal being put to work. Um, anyway, uh, I consider bear crawls to be a really good movement because it requires your whole body to be activated. So, because I'm in a crouched over position, my abs have to stay engaged during the whole time. It's not necessarily a plank, but it's a plank like position, and so the abs do stay activated the whole way through. Then you're crawling. So the crawling motion forces your shoulders to stay engaged and the chest to stay engaged, just for you, just to hold yourself in place, and also give. So while the main driver of the forward motion is the legs, um, the hands do kind of like, there is a feeling of you're pushing the earth back, and all of that. So like that pushing the earth back feeling requires some back recruitment, some serratus recruitment. Just holding yourself up there requires chest and shoulder recruitment, and because it's the sled, you're able to put a lot of weight on and be relatively safe, actually quite a bit safe, and uh, you get that feeling of your body gets that heavy load stimulus, and it's now distributed among the entire body. Then I'm doing the side to side medicine ball throws again with the 30-pound medicine ball, but after the crawls, like I'm completely exhausted. Trying to put out as much explosive force as possible, trying to like squeeze out every last drop of effort that I can, and then immediately going into alternate kettlebell deadlifts. Again, same thing. Like the idea was more of physical overall exhaustion than absolute muscle failure. So my goal is to get good at performing hard movements for a long time, and I believe muscle growth will come as a consequence of that. And this can be seen in like uh, strongman athletes who do like yoke carries and stuff like that. They do deadlifts and like regular concentric eccentric work and whatnot, but a lot of their training is strongman style training, and they have a really good muscular build. So I kind of have that thought in the back of my mind where I try to do some of the stuff that's like strongman-y, but then also try to do like movements that are explosive and stuff that keeps me more athletic. Um, so uh, for the next exercise, what I do is sideways or lateral um, sled crawls. I did it in yesterday's workout, but to go a little bit more in depth about what I'm feeling while I'm doing it. So, um, again, as with the previous sled movement, which was the bear crawl, I'm kind of staying in like a plank position, which requires not like a complete plank. What I essentially mean is your body is parallel to the floor, which requires the core to be activated to sleep. Your core is activated because if the hip sinks, the movement becomes harder to do than if the hip stays up to drag it to the side. So just by the nature of the movement, I'll keep my hip up and move. Then um, then while moving from side to side, in this case, uh, while moving, so the hand that's pushing outwards to the side, um, that's the tricep pushing to the side, and but also, like, since it's a movement to the side and you're holding yourself up in place, your shoulders are engaged, and because you're pushing to the side, I suspect there's probably a little bit of like rear delt and upper back activation that has to happen in order to accomplish that motion. For the next part of the circuit, I did these hip flexor lower ab movements. So you use a kettlebell or whatever as a obstacle in between your legs, and then you try to move one leg above and then side to side. The second leg that comes in doesn't hit the floor. It tries to stop in midair or stop before hitting the floor and then moving the other way. Going for about 10 each side. I like this exercise quite a bit for my lower abs and hip flexors. Having good hip flexors is good for speed of movement, being able to jump higher, and one of my goals, long-term goals, is to be able to dunk. Anyway, then I'm doing alternate suitcase deadlifts. Kind of the same thing that I mentioned earlier of doing unilateral work and doing stuff side to side. Whenever I do suitcase deadlifts, I find really good contraction of my core and obliques, and I attribute doing a lot of this stuff for my overall ab and body development. Anyway, I did 5 sets per circuit, except for the last one where I did 3 sets. I was pretty much toast after 3 sets, and yeah, that's all I had to give. Did some posing after, but yeah, that's it for the workout portion. Then some posing, and that's it for the video.
Recording this at the end of the workout after a 15-minute sauna session. I find that the sauna sessions kind of shrink me, although it gives me a more ripped look. It kind of shrinks me. I don't know, a lot of people, or a few of my friends have said that I have reduced size, and I kind of feel that way too. Maybe I need to do some more bodybuilding style training for a bit or whatever, but I doubt it. I'm sure eventually so like as a natural lifter, you're not gonna gain that much size or lose that much size if you're not in a severe deficit. So I don't know. I think I take all these things with a grain of salt. I spent a lot of time lifting to know that, and seen a lot of people to know that many different methods work, and a lot of stuff doesn't. But anyway, what was that pose? I think it's this way, right? Yeah, there you go. Thought that looked good. Anyway, that's it for today's workout and video. See you all in the next one.